Thank you very much, Nicholas. And first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Renata, Patrick, Maximiliano. I think this is the right coalition that we need to move forward. But I want to take a little bit of time to say, why are we doing Disrupt Europe at all and Disrupt Europe here? And we've had a number of feedback on this from various quarters to say, oh, well, what exactly are you trying to disrupt? But let's start with how many of you actually know about the World Report, what is known as the Living Planet Report? So it's something that is issued by the World Wildlife Fund. They do it quite often, and the latest one says in the last 40 years, I'm not talking here about 400 years, I'm not talking here about 2 centuries, I'm talking about the last, sorry.
No, don't, please.
Nice to meet you. In the last 40 years, our current way of doing business, that includes all of you here and all our industry and all of that, has led to the destruction of 52% of the world's wildlife. That's in 40 years, our current way of doing business has destroyed 52% of the world's wildlife. Do you think that there's any way to get that back? Absolutely none, right? So there are some things, there are some ways of doing things which are not reversible. If you look at the innovation performance of the EU over the last 28 years or 30 years, you would see that in spite of a lot of effort, we are not only today, 30 years later, not only are we trailing the major economies in terms of innovation, that's the US and Japan, but we're also now trailing South Korea. 30 years ago, South Korea's GDP was roughly the same as Ghana. Okay? And very soon we will be trailing China, India, Australia, and other countries that are coming up. So it is clear that our current way of doing business is not working. And it's not something that we can defend or say, well, if we continue to innovate or look at innovation entrepreneurship as we were doing in the last 30 years, we will continue to improve, we will not. Now, the question here is that, how do you go about this? So some people are saying, well, let's do some incremental changes. Let's kind of tinker at the edges, let's kind of change a few things here and there, and let's try to, in a way, put things together and make it work. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is not the way that we are going to get out of our current situation. We need to think differently. We need to be disruptive, not only in the way we innovate and be entrepreneurial, but also in the way we look at innovation entrepreneurship. Today, if you go to any major website, and I'll challenge you to find me a website that does otherwise, and you go and try and select your occupation from the drop-down list, there is no occupation that says entrepreneur. There is no website in Europe today, or anywhere else where you can, from the drop-down, click the word entrepreneur. You can't. Or innovator, no chance either. Okay? Why is that? Because innovation entrepreneurship is not looked at as a calling or as something that we should do. It is looked at as a side activity that you kind of do in between jobs because it's kind of cool for a while. That is not the way to go about it. We need to change the mindset, our mindset and the mindset of those around us, and we need to do that disruptively. But let's start with the vision. I don't know if you can have the slide up there. Can we? Right, so this is the vision of Disrupt Europe. The vision stretches 2020, and this is the work that we've done over some time with the World Economic Forum, partners with the World Economic Forum, and also with certain EU projects such as the one that looked at the app economy. And the numbers here are what we think should be the numbers by 2020. So we look at about 250,000 new jobs per year, startup jobs, yeah, entrepreneurial jobs, not in existing industry. About 10,000 new startups a year. The current figure, and of course, Auntie was here before, but the current figure I think is more in the 3,000 to 4,000 range. So we're looking at least a twofold increase of that. And 2,000 seed stage funded startups. So it's not about just having a startup and then dying in 18 months, and then it is about the fact that there is a market, a single market, that allows for investment and allows for seed stage investment. You're not going to invest in anything if there isn't an exit or if there isn't a market in which you can get back that investment. And that is work that we need to do. Now, how many of you can name, and I'll take a very quick poll, of the top startups from Europe in the world? Patrick, please don't say anything because I'm sure you know the answers. Can somebody just shout out a name? Top European startups in the world today. Spotify. BlaBlaCar, not really. Skype, yes. SoundCloud, yeah. Yeah. So roughly the number hovers around 2 or 3. Okay? 2 or 3 is roughly the number. We want to see consistently 4 in the top 10. And I'm talking here about 4 in the $1 billion plus. That's why I said blah, blah, class, not yet there. It's not a $1 billion startup. Okay, and 1,000 growth stage funded startups. So you have 2,000 in the seed stage and 1,000 in the growth stage. 2 months ago, we had our convention event where we explained that actually, and I think Patrick can talk to that as well, is that a lot of growth stage startups in Europe struggle to find any kind of funding at all, because what people ask is, what are you going to do after you've grown and gone to the 10 million range? How are you going to sustain yourself? So these are questions that are not only affected by mindset and policy, but by ensuring that the market is functioning. The single market is functioning. And finally, we would like to see about 2.5% of the job market covered by startup jobs, and about 9.7% of the European GDP affected by startup activity. Today, the numbers are radically less, so there's a lot of space for growth in that case. Now, very quickly, because we have a lot of other things to talk about today, what are the main actions that we are proposing to do that? Well, of course, the first one is to ensure that, as we are doing today, there is a strong bond between those who have succeeded, those who have made it, can then mentor and be role models for those who are trying to take that first and second and third step. That is crucial, and that is why Euromentors is so crucial for us, the What If I campaign, and we want to support that and ensure that it's at the centerpiece of that. But it's not enough to just have entrepreneur mentorship and support for mentors through role models. We must also have a network of innovators and innovating organizations that can consistently provide the support at the member state level. It is too much to expect that every entrepreneur in Europe should cross the pond and go over, well, in this case, not really the pond, but the channel, and go over to London or travel to Berlin. We need to have more entrepreneurship innovation in the different member states, and this means that we need to join efforts through networks. So we want to see a network of innovators. We want to see strong action there from the Commission, the Parliament, and we hope to see that. And lastly, there is the issue of risk-taking, and we'll discuss that. Nicholas has some points on that. But risk-taking is a two-way street. If you ask young people to take risk, as we do, you must also be there to support that risk-taking. So you must be able to allow people to have a second start. And we'll talk about the actions that we are going to take to help make that happen. Disrupt Europe is not an event, as some people mistakenly thought. And Disrupt Europe is not a slogan. Disrupt Europe is a vision, and is a vision that we share with you. And this vision will come to fruition if we can make it work together. So I invite you all, and everybody who's listening to this, and I believe we have a lot of action on Twitter and Facebook, to come together and make Disrupt Europe happen. Let's get together, and let's ensure that the Europe of the future is the Europe that works for entrepreneurs, where entrepreneurship innovation is mainstream. Thank you.